The John Allah Story. Juho Augusti Yrjänäinen, known to us as John, was born on August 5th, 1876 in Kauhajoki, Finland. This was the family home he left in Finland when he traveled to the United States, leaving behind his parents Jaakko and Lena and 6 siblings. The house was moved from the original farm to become part of a heritage museum in Kauhajoki. He traveled to Liverpool, Quebec, Canada, and Hancock, Michigan, USA. Juho traveled under the Alla Yrjänäinen name, which was changed to John Alla in the United States. John arrived in Hancock in 1902 to join his brother, Sam Alla, who had already been there for 4 years. John kept in touch with his family back in Finland through letters, and they sent him this family portrait. John had his photo taken and added to the portrait and sent it back to Kauhajoki. It still stands in the house in Finland. John and Sam became contractors and built many of the houses in Hancock.
I'm not sure what year they started to build, but in 1912 they were either John Alla or Alla Brothers was hitting their stride for homes, and my dad said that Sam Alla used to take care of the masonry and the brickwork and that, and he said about as soon as that mortar was dry, well, they were building a house on top of it, and he had a real good system for building the. As the house was going up, the chimney was going right up with it, you know, and they got to the top, and when they took the staging down from the top, the house was completed. So he was a real efficient builder. I do remember my grandmother Hapapuro talking about it when he came, and he built the Limminga school, and within a week it was done. And you know, that time that was unheard of, and so they wouldn't pay him because they thought it was faulty work. So it took a little doing. You know, as we talk about then, they were like, let's get this paid, yeah. And that the walls were down, and they were painting the walls, you know, when they were flat before they lifted them up. Okay, they will. Nowadays they build, it's up, but 1915 or so, well, that didn't happen. So
John married Ida Maria Salo, known as Mary, on February 11th, 1911. They lived at 809 Franklin Street in Hancock, Michigan. This is how the house looks today. They had 5 children: Ollie and Syl, John Jr., Esther, and Eddie. This photo was taken before Eddie was born.
But there used to be this here group of Finns that came here. There was one bunch that came just to find work, and then there was another group that came because, you know, America was opportunity. And when they got here, they looked out for each other, and for want of a better name, they call themselves the White Knights. It's maybe a spin-off of the kind of a nasty business group that was in Europe that came to America, and they would help each other. If John Alla and Matt Yrjitalo were a private example of that. Yrjitalo made sure that John Alla had the lumber that he needed when he needed, and in turn all the business went to Early Tullow. So they both, kind of came out pretty well. That Early Tullow family on Prince's Point, you probably have heard everybody talk about that. Well,
Yeah,
apparently that belonged to them, and they used to spend a lot of time out there. And I can never remember being there when I was small, but it probably was.
I was there.
Well, anyway, they were out at Early Tullow's, and there was this big deer came swimming across the lake. So John Ola and Pa went out with a boat and an axe, and they took care of the deer, and they cut it up. And well, anyway, they got fined, and my mother she's so angry, and she was still cranking at my dad 50 years later. But
because they got fined for killing the deer.
Yeah, for taking a deer out of season, and then after they paid their fine, well, you know what to do with this deer, and that was it. And the horns are up in the upstairs of Olive Farm. They're trophy horns, but they kind of get just put on the side.
That's why I never heard the story behind them.
Okay, that's the story behind it.
How did our grandparents become citizens when they weren't really functional in English? Do you memorize the answers?
I think it was very easy in the good old days. You just got
It was easier, I think.
Well, I tell you what, I've been looking at some of those old records, and John Vollenhouse, who was adopted, he's got two certified birth certificates in the courthouse in Houghton. Whatever happened, they wanted to ship him back to Finland, and all of a sudden so. What has happened, or how they worked it? There were men of influence, John Ola Senior, who they could go up to the courthouse and hey boys, we got a problem. Let's take care of it. And that was it.
So he had two birth
You
certificates.
got to remember, this was the proper country and Luzbek, but.
There's probably some hanky-panky going on there.
That's how things got done.
That's what they got done. Yes.
That was.
When his crew wasn't building houses, John had them make caskets. The Italian Hall disaster on December 24th, 1913, claimed the lives of 62 children and 11 adults. This is how Milton Salo describes his father's reaction to seeing all of the little white caskets being brought to Calumet from Hancock.
Those white caskets probably came from Early Tullow, who were good friends, maybe even partners with Olas in Hancock, cash and carry them. When business was poor in a building, they built caskets, and they were fine stained white, but and my dad always said there was something that got him the day of that, or near the funeral time. They had them stacked in a wagon, that they were sticking out, and they brought it from Hancock to Calumet, and he said that remained in his mind as long as he lived, and he couldn't forget that.
Another task John Ola would take on to keep his crew busy was separating lots in the Hancock Cemetery by pouring concrete dividers. Many were marked with the initial of the family buried there.
I have this kind of a feeling that I was there when they were moving the Ola house from where Kay's home is now, and Dad wasn't there. Was there not especially to help, but in case there was trouble. When they started to make a move, if there was trouble, and I have this feeling of being there, and the house when it left from Kay's, it went. No problem at all. But when he got down to Ola's corner and then started to make the turn into the yard and get the house in position, it seems to me there was I can vaguely remember a lot of shouting and
Yeah, a lot of. See, when they moved to the farm at that point down on Gristmill Road, they must have lost everything then.
I'm going to say yes.
Okay, so
That when they settled on the farm, they were ready for a third start already.
it would be a third start.
Yes,
Okay, the first start was the houses in Hancock.
yes.
Second start was
Well, that was in the boom, the big boom in Lawns,
okay.
and then the booming bust. And you know what? This was not John Allah probably kept the papers on the house, and then held a mortgage, and which would have been real prudent move on his part. That he had a relatively small investment into a mortgage, but I think it started to boomerang, and there was just too many.
Well, when the stock market crashed, nobody had any money either.
I think there was other things beside the stock that shut down Hancock. The mining boom kind of fizzled away. That copper money started to leave, and Baraga County. I'm not sure what happened, but this was in that transition when Ford Motor Company bought out that Stearns and Culver in Lawns, and I think that was what happened.
So then he moved on to the farm. And the farm at that time just had that little old house there. It was, what, 3 rooms?
It was barely that, yes.
It was
a
tiny.
log house, because in later years that just came to be a summer kitchen. And then your grandmother used to can in there.
But see, that's what they moved into. Did they move that schoolhouse right away?
That's interesting. How long did it take? I'm going to suspect that your grandfather was pretty anxious to get that schoolhouse moved to.
Well, I would think so. He had 5 kids.
Yes.
Grandpa then having had so much and coming down so little, then when he got to the farm, then he existed on farming. And what else did he do, or do you know?
Your grandmother had poultry, chickens, eggs. Grandma Mary, Aunt Mary, was big time in poultry, and I think that's where the bulk of their earnings came from. The grain from the farm went into the chickens, and your grandmother knew what she was doing as far as chickens. I think that.
This is the Ulla farm today. John Ulla's grandson, Jim, lives there with his wife, Mary. In the late 1950s, John and Mary moved into a small house next to their son, Eddie, in Lawns. Mary passed away on July 14, 1960, with John following on October 24, 1961. They are buried in the Pelkey Cemetery in Baraga County, Michigan.